Speaker Mike Johnson. He said he's exhausted by the gig, but it is not going to get any easier over the course of the next several months.
This could be the toughest stretch in his career.
Good morning, I'm Anna Palmer.
And I'm Jake Sherman.
And welcome to the Daily Punch, brought to you by Punchbowl News. It's Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025. Let's get into the mix. Here are your Washington headlines of the day. Number one, Speaker Mike Johnson's tough gig. Number two, President Donald Trump's mum on Obamacare subsidies legislation. And number three, the Senate defies Trump on blue slips. All right, Jake, let's get into it. You wrote a really terrific top this morning looking at how Speaker Mike Johnson, he said he's exhausted by the gig, but it is not going to get any easier over the course of the next several months.
Yeah, this could be the toughest stretch in his career over the next 11 months. Not like the previous stretch has been any easier, but he is staring down. This is his gauntlet, Anna, is what I said at the top. The next 11 months will test the conference's patience, his own political savvy, and Donald Trump's power in the GOP. So let's just tick this down. Today, voters in Tennessee's 7th congressional district will go to the polls to choose former Congressman Mark Green's successor. This is a district he won by 22 points. Turnout is unpredictable in this race, but Republicans basically feel like the Republicans I talked to that he'll win by between 4 and 6 points. Matt Van Epps, that is, the Republican candidate. That will raise all sorts of questions about Republican status before the midterms. This is a district, as we've said a million times, Donald Trump won by 22 points. If this dude won Van Epps by 12 points, that 10 points, 11 points, that would still be something to be worried about. We have the Obamacare premium tax credits expiring at the end of the month. They have no plan. Republicans have basically this week, which they're not going to put a health care bill on the floor this week because it's already started. Next week, they have the NDAA on the floor. The week after that is their last week in session. Maybe they do something then. I don't know. 59 days until the government expires, 24 days in session between now and then. A bunch of Republicans are unhappy, generally speaking. The Republicans and Democrats have issues together. This is a new dynamic with the president's tactics in the Caribbean and Venezuela. There's rare bipartisan agreement that what the president is doing in the Caribbean and some of the strikes in the Caribbean might be illegal, improper, something like that. What are they going to do next year? 2026 is very difficult for them. You know, just a whole host of things. Redistricting is tough. The reelection is tough. They have to convince donors they're still a good investment. Anna, what do you think?
I think it's interesting because even if he wins on some of these things, right, even if they pass the NDAA, even if they get government funding, you know, across the finish line, which is going to be a very big task, like those are not offensive moves. That is just like the cost of doing business, of the bare minimum, right, for Congress. And I think what you see is this frustration among rank and file, among, you know, just everybody to say, like, what are we doing here? You know, after the reconciliation package, the tax package, they have no kind of agenda going into the midterms. And that's going to be difficult when you think about the numbers and the shrinking majority that the speaker has. The disgruntlement becomes important. It's not just in the far reaches of different pockets of the Republican conference, right? I mean, you've got Representative Elise Stefanik, Republican from New York, a member of Johnson's own leadership team, threatening to work to defeat the NDAA because she thinks the speaker's getting rolled by Democrats. It's pretty unheard of.
Yeah, no, the whole thing is pretty crazy, to be honest with you. I want to be clear here. Like on all of these topics, I'm not blaming Mike Johnson for any of this.
No,
you know
and I
what
didn't mean to
Like,
say that. I think he's got a tough hand, and like it's hard to put wins on the board that are going to make people feel good, that are going to say like, hey, like we're winners.
That's right.
We're going to go into the midterm and we're going to crush, right? Like what are Republicans going to be able to do here?
Well, and here's the problem. A lot of what the contemporary political mood is that prices are too high, that affordability, all these issues, this is not something that you could just immediately legislate away. You know what I mean? Like this is not something, I'm not suggesting that there aren't policy solutions to these, because of course there are policy solutions to everything. It depends on what side of the political aisle you're on, et cetera, et cetera. There are no quick fixes. And in a majority that is extremely small. It's tough to do anything. And remember, like, I just want to reiterate this. I think we said this last week. The House right now, let me just make sure I'm right before I say this, but the House right now is split 219 to 213. That is insanely tight, right? And let's say they win this Van Epp seat today. That's 220, 213. MTG retires in January. That's 219, 213. Democrats get a seat in Texas. That's 219, 214. Then they get a seat in April, New Jersey. That's 219, 215. That's very tight, 219, 215. If you have anyone else get sick, die, retire, anything, that compresses. That gets smaller.
Yeah.
And I just think that, that all is incredibly difficult. And remember, like, big donors are going to put their money where they think they can get the best bang for their buck. If they see the House Republicans as not a great investment and they think they're, $1 million, $5 million, $2,000, whatever, is better used in a state like New Hampshire where they could flip a Democratic seat to a Republican seat, the House Republicans become not a great investment. And that's where it gets challenging for the GOP, right? That's where it gets tough. And I'll say this, for those out there who suggest that you could replicate the Donald Trump turnout model in a midterm election, that stipulation is going to be undermined by the fact, let's say they win by 5 points today. Let's say they win by 10 points in Tennessee. You could say it's a special election, but you're not approaching the turnout for Donald Trump in a district that Donald Trump romped in.
Money and momentum, Jake. That is what drives elections and certainly drives parties, right? I mean, whether you're at the presidential level, whether you're at the congressional level, and certainly if the kind of conventional wisdom starts to be that, Republicans, you look at the poll numbers, you look at all kinds of different indicators that it might be a much harder election for them. The redistricting hasn't been as positive as they expected it to be, that all of a sudden the money goes to the Senate, right? Because that's really the backstop. And Republicans are playing offense there. And you know what donors like? They like to play offense. They want to win.
Yes,
they don't want to
that's
just
right.
be defending things. And that's going to be a big challenge for certainly the speaker and his leadership team as they need to continue to raise a bunch of money in order
That's right.
to keep the majority. All right, Jake, moving on to the number 2 story of the morning. Andrew Desiderio has a story about how the Senate is barreling toward a healthcare vote next week that will amount to little more than a partisan messaging exercise in a year-end subsidy cliff that will prompt massive premium hikes for millions of Americans. He writes, of course, this comes, just days before when President Trump and the White House was expected to potentially announce a plan, get their kind of energy behind deals so that it wasn't just a messaging exercise, an acknowledgement, frankly, by the nervousness among some in the Republican Party that these hikes go into effect, that they're going to have a really big challenge in the midterms. But this administration has reversed course and are kind of nowhere when it comes to what's happening in the Senate now.
Yeah, listen, if Donald Trump is not behind a plan, it's not going to get done, right? Like, let's take the best case scenario, right? They could get something through the Senate. They cannot get something through the House without Trump's deep involvement. They can't. And unless the White House, I think we talked about this yesterday, the White House sent me signals and the administration sent me signals, GOP leadership sent me signals that they are not going to get deeply involved in support a plan and they wanted to see what Congress could do. That's just not going to work. It's just not. This is turning into exactly what we thought it would be, which is a December messaging exercise, as Andrew puts it, on the Senate floor in which both parties are going to have a plan. Neither of them are going to pass. Neither of them are going to be, voted on by the Senate or by the House, rather. Neither of them are going to become law. And in the House, like I had this in the top, but we can mention it here because it's topical. Topical, get it? Top, hello.
He's here all week, folks.
It's the end of the year. I'm really hitting my stride, it feels like. Steve Scalise said to me, like, we're still building consensus. We're still doing our thing. Like, and I think I'll be clear here. Like, I think it's an incredible gamble. I think it's an incredible gamble for Republicans to not have a health care plan that they're going to vote on that could become law. Like, I don't want to say they're not taking it seriously, but they're kind of not taking it seriously.
Don't you think? I mean, I think this item, so Andrew, Laura Weiss, Sally Mutnick, collaborated on it. It's almost like Republicans. I mean, they're just like asking, they're not quite begging Trump, but like, I mean, you see these quotes, Jen Kiggins from Republican from Virginia. I would love to hear what the White House thoughts are too. But in the meantime, us members have been talking on a bipartisan basis. Senator Mike Rounds acknowledging the fact that like without Trump, I don't think anything will pass without the president's approval. There's lots of ideas out there, he says. Let's see if we can't put something together and take it to him. I mean, there is an acknowledgement across regional, Republicans from different regions in the U.S. to representation, both the Senate and the House and among some Republicans. And they're just looking for Trump to engage, but he is not.
Yeah. The problem is they heard what he had to say. Right? They heard what he had to say last week, which was he wanted an extension of the subsidies. They leaked a plan. They wanted an extension of the subsidies. They didn't mention Hyde protections, which is the law that federal money can't be spent on abortion. And the plan was much more favorable to Democrats than it was to Republicans. They heard what he had to say. And that most people didn't like it. The speaker who got a call from the White House said, most of my people don't want to do something like this. So like they heard what he had to say. It got knocked down. And here we are, I'm not actually sure they do want to hear what he has to say. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
well, I mean, they're looking for, I think there's an acknowledgement that without the president, nothing is going to happen.
Yeah. And maybe they try. I don't think let me put it this way. I don't think they get out of next year without trying some sort of reconciliation plan to deal with healthcare, et cetera, but
going to be a big lift. All right, Jake, let's go to the number 3 story of the morning. The Senate Republicans are standing by the blue slip in defiance of President Donald Trump. The Senate's adherence to the blue slip tradition is standing in the way of Alina Habba and Lindsey Halligan's nominations, but Senate Republicans aren't budging and are not going to help President Donald Trump here when it comes to his U.S. attorney's pick.
This is one of the rare, this is one of the 2 instances or several instances in which the Senate's old traditions are staying through the Trump administration. The other being the filibuster and blue slip, which allows home state senators to stand in the way of a nominee. And Trump has been very clear he wants this blown up. Habba and Halligan are 2 examples of attorneys that cannot get through the Senate. And the courts have said, well, you can't get through the Senate and you're not properly appointed, even as a temporary appointment. You can't bring cases against people.
Yeah.
Like, period.
A big problem for Trump because this is,
this is where he wants to go after Comey and right. Yeah. I mean, so, that's the way the government works, unfortunately. He's found ways around lots of things, not this one.
All right, we will leave it there, watching it closely. Thanks so much for listening. We appreciate it. If you like the Daily Punch, share it on social media. Tell your friends. It's the best way for folks to find out about us. And, of course, you can go deeper on all things Punchbowl News at punchbowl.news. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.